If you were a kid in the 90s, there was one place that captured the essence of fun and excitement more than anywhere else: the arcade. A neon-lit world of flashing screens, pulsing music, and endless rows of games. The 90s arcade was a cultural hub where the lines between skill, luck, social connection blurred into one unforgettable experience. But to understand the golden age of the 90s arcade, we have to take a step back in time. Arcades didn't begin in the 90s. Their roots trace back to the 1970s when the very first video games appeared in public spaces. The legendary Pong, released in 1972, was the first coin-operated arcade game, and it sparked the birth of the arcade industry. The 80s brought even more iconic games like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and Donkey Kong, all of which laid the foundation for the arcade craze of the 90s. By the time the 90s rolled around, arcades were at their peak. What made the 90s unique was the shift in technology, especially with the rise of fighting games like Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat, which became the backbone of the arcade scene. These games created an intense competitive atmosphere where skill was rewarded and bragging rights were everything. The rush of landing the perfect combo or finishing move kept players hooked for hours. I'm sure many of us can remember going to the arcade and there'd be lines of kids just waiting for their turn to play. It wasn't just fighting games. 90s arcades offered a diverse range of experiences, from racing games like Daytona USA to rhythm games like Dance Dance Revolution, which combined video gaming with physical movement. The variety of game types gave everyone a chance to find their niche. Not gonna lie, I spent a lot of time playing Dance Dance Revolution in between classes. But what truly set the 90s arcade apart wasn't just the games, it was the social experience. Arcades became the ultimate hangout spot for kids and teens. You didn't just go to play, you went to challenge your friends and compete with strangers. Maybe even show off your skills in front of a crowd. There was a sense of community built around the shared love of the games, where friendly rivalries were born and high scores were the measure of fame. A key part of the 90s arcade experience was the thrill of the tokens. You'd feed coins or tokens into the machines, hoping to stretch out your playtime as long as possible. And then, of course, there were the ticket games. Those colorful machines that rewarded you with endless streams of tickets for every win. After racking up tickets, you'd head to the prize counter, trading them in for the smallest plastic toys, bouncy balls, or if you're lucky, something bigger like a stuffed animal or a toy. It was never anything really good, and it never really lasted longer than a day. But as the 90s drew to a close, so did the golden age of arcades. With the rise of home gaming consoles like the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, and Sega Dreamcast, gaming moved from public space of arcades into the private world of living rooms. Suddenly gamers could play high-quality games at home without needing to spend quarters to continue every game over. This shift slowly drained arcades of their popularity. Though traditional arcades began to fade in the early 2000s, their legacy still lingers today. Many of the games we fell in love with in the 90s have been revived on modern consoles or through retro gaming collections. In fact, in recent years there's been a resurgence of arcades in the form of barcades, spaces where adults can relive their childhood by playing classic games while enjoying a drink with friends. And just like in the 90s, it's all about the experience. 90s arcade wasn't just a place to play games, it was a community. It was where we met our friends, challenged ourselves, and spent hours immersed in a world of flashing lights and buzzing sounds. Arcades taught us patience, competition, and how to celebrate both victories and defeats. They may not be as common today, but the impact of those 90s arcades will never be forgotten. For those of us who lived it, they'll always hold a special place in our memories, one token at a time.